Will special counsel Robert Mueller ever get a sit-down with the president? What's Rudy Giuliani's strategy for his high-profile client, Donald Trump? And the latest on the trial of former Trump campaign manager, Paul Manafort. Lots to talk about with our next guest, Kendall Coffey, former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida. He joins me from Miami. He's a founding member of Coffey Burlington. What do you make of the Manafort trial so far, Kendall?
Well, I mean, the defense did a great job of battering the prosecution's star witness, Rick Gates, the former #2 guy for Manafort. But with all the evidence and all the issues, if Manafort walks away with a not guilty on all counts, it'll be one of the biggest upsets since, well, Donald Trump became president over Hillary Clinton.
That bank manager who testified for the prosecution was awfully strong on Manafort's request for a loan and lying on the request.
And it's a strong count. You know, it doesn't sound exciting to talk about bank applications and getting loans, but it's a lot of dollars. There are some glaring discrepancies which can't be really overcome by the I forgot. For example, Manafort apparently putting down that his 2015 income from his company was over $4 million. Looks like it's less than $400,000. I think that's going to hit the average juror as something really serious. And they know when they fill out applications for credit cards, they understand the information there isn't important. So even if somehow Manafort gets past the Rick Gates counts, I think the bank falsification issues are going to be a real problem.
What's your make of the behavior of the judge? Some think that Judge T.S. Ellis put his thumb on the scales against the prosecution. He once said in court, "I'm Caesar in my own Rome, and it's a small Rome."
Well, that's the joy of federal judges. They're appointed for life. They get to do it the way they see it. I don't think he's been hostile to the prosecution, but if you're looking at this in terms of the way most judges are, frankly, a lot of federal judges are pretty pro-prosecution. He's been at least even-handed and has done some things in terms of limiting evidence that have been helpful for the defense. But at the end of the day, the judge isn't going to decide this case. I think he's going to give a jury accurate instructions on the law, and it's all going to be up to the men and women that have been hearing this evidence.
What do you make of the back and forth of the statements of Rudy Giuliani?
Well, you know, I think he's actually doing a better job than people give him credit for. You know, everyone thought he was a smart guy years ago, and now he's getting ripped as the attorney for President Trump. Let me give you one example, Larry, which maybe suggests that Giuliani, although unfiltered and he makes some misstatements from time to time, maybe isn't totally off the mark. When he first came on the case, he came out right away and said that, yeah, the president knew about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. And that was like, well, how could he do this? The president or his spokesperson seemed to say that he didn't know about it. Well, Giuliani said it because it was obviously true. It wasn't believable to say that Donald Trump didn't know about that payment. And so a lot of what seemed like his odd, unwise things have probably made more sense than not. Now he's kind of all over the map on whether there's going to be an interview or not between the president and the special counsel. But that may also be part of a script playing much more to the court of public opinion and maybe even members of Congress than it is to a judge or to a lawyer.
Do you think in all of this, Donald Trump Jr. has some legal risk?
I think there may be risk. And it comes back to what, as we look at this entire scenario, was the most significant event of alleged collusion, cooperation, whatever you want to call it, between Trump functionaries and Russia. And that is the meeting at Trump Tower in June, which, frankly, had some statements that could come back to haunt Donald Trump. He testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee that his father did not have prior knowledge of that meeting. In fact, indicated he had no knowledge at all about the meeting before it took place. Is that going to be the same thing that Michael Cohen says? And by the way, if Paul Manafort is convicted and hammered with 10 years or more of prison time and decides he's not going to get a presidential pardon, is Paul Manafort going to have something to say about whether Donald Trump's statements that his father had no prior knowledge about that critical meeting, whether Donald Trump Jr.'s statements were truthful or not? So, yeah, I think that if there's a bullseye on Donald Trump Jr.'s back, It's that meeting at Trump Tower back in June of 2016.
What do you make of the president still keeping on public attacks on the Attorney General?
Well, I don't think that's really making any points with most observers. What I don't know is whether his base, including members of Congress that are responsive to him, have lost confidence in the Attorney General, and that if Trump does something extraordinary, like push Jeff Sessions out, whether the attacks are setting the stage so that there will be at least some acceptability. But I grew up in a culture where you don't tug on Superman's cape. The Attorney General is not only the Attorney General, but represents the Department of Justice. And lots of federal prosecutors and FBI agents who have immense power. So I would not go out of my way, whether I were the president or just a lawyer with the privilege of talking to Larry King. I wouldn't go out of my way to antagonize the Attorney General of the United States.
Kendall, when they talk about, Giuliani says that if Trump meets with Mueller on a back and forth, there will be a perjury trap. How can you set a perjury trap, thinking that you know your client is going to lie?
Yeah, the perjury trap's sort of an ironic statement, isn't it? Because if you're telling the truth, why are you worried about a trap? What he's arguing, I think, is that Mueller has already decided that everything Comey has said is truthful, because he will say the Mueller-Comey relationship going back for years, and therefore it's a trap for President Trump to walk in and say anything that contradicts James Comey. That may or may not be true, but I don't think the perjury trap it helps the public understand what the issue is. What it really is a question of whether Giuliani, thinks that President Trump can go in and stay with the script, avoid the obvious minefields in an interview with the special counsel's office, or whether he's going to go off script, say things that turn out not to be true. And whatever you say about Giuliani, I think he's smart enough to know that that interview really needs to be avoided.
Kendall Coffey, as always, thanks for your time today.
Hey, thanks a lot, Larry.